Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today for my first live show of 2025. So I'm excited to have a great guest on the show with me, Josh Renneker, who is currently the CEO or COO, sorry, of Energy Access. Is that right, Josh?
That is correct. Yep.
And Josh and I met a couple, I guess, last year doing some networking things, and I was just impressed by Josh's I know you have a great online presence and real authentic, and then we found out we were both drummers. So then we were then we knew we were kindred spirits from then out. So Josh, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I've been with Energy Access now for almost 20 years. This year will be 19. Been in the COO seat since 2013. So going on 12 years in that role, and looking forward to a chat today, and I'm sure we'll discuss drums at some point.
Yeah, definitely. I know right before we came on, we were sharing some drum stories, so that'll definitely come up. But yeah, tell us about what Energy Access does and what the company does.
Sure. So we're a manufacturing firm. We're based here in Indianapolis. Started 25 years ago, really to support the battery charger market for smart batteries, specifically SM bus. So that's the technology that's used in phones and laptops and anything where you would need a gas gauge to tell you how much energy is left in your battery pack. Okay. So we got our start there, and then in the last decade, we've really kind of spread our wings, and we've now gotten into doing full power management. So now not just desktop charging and isolated charging. Now it's managing power and power distribution in devices. And then most recently, we started to get into BMS. So that is a circuit that goes inside of a battery pack to protect it, to make sure it doesn't get damaged or become unsafe to use. Okay. So really, I mean, anything from the wall all the way to the device and all the way down to the cell level is what we support. The only thing we don't do really is build the battery packs. It's all the other power things that go into that. And we're industry agnostic. So we support everything from medical, military, test and measurement, power, fire, health and safety. We do a lot of stuff in drones, land, underwater, and in the air. We do a lot of stuff in robotics and material handling. So we're really kind of all over the place when it comes to the industries that we serve, and being able to speak all those different languages is kind of where we find our bread and butter.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. And I think you've told me before, so you're not the company isn't kind of like mass manufacturing, like it's more kind of like you kind of spec it out with the client's needs, and then you build kind of a low volume. Is that kind of right?
That's correct. Yeah. So we are a low volume, high mix. So we do have some kind of standardized platforms, think of it more of like capabilities that we have in our pocket that we can use to get to market quickly. So the companies that we support, or teams that we support, because we do support some larger organizations, just specialized teams, they come to us for critical power, right? When the power system is something that's critical and power is needed all the time, every time, those are the kind of things that come to us. So we're not in the commodity market, so we don't support cell phones and laptops and those kind of things. Everything we do is business to business. Much of what we do goes out of the door without our name on it. We do a ton of stuff that's just custom branded or not branded at all, because we do a lot of things at board level. So they come and buy our circuit or our technology and embed it in their own device, just to make sure that the battery's being taken care of appropriately. So yeah, we're definitely a custom, more custom shop than anything else.
And then I think you've told me before, like, the average project, like, but by the time somebody wants something, by the time you deliver it, there's sometimes a lot of variance in how long that time is. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny when I get asked like, oh, what's your time to market? I'm like, well, it's anywhere from same day to 3 years, right? It's like it's somewhere in that window. Because I mean, we've had situations where we've had a customer that was in development and everything they've been doing has been on their bench, but now they're ready to take it to market, and they're off to a trade show in Las Vegas, and they call us on a Thursday and they're like, hey, we're landing in Vegas on Monday. we need a charger sent to the suite at MGM Grand so that we can charge our device in the booth. Because they never thought of that, right? Until they're like ready to go, and they don't have the charger situation sorted out. So yeah, that's happened a couple of times in my career where we kind of come to the aid of a customer that's like, we got to figure out how to charge this thing in the booth, and can you help us? And we ended up sending it to a hotel room somewhere just to make a show so that they can release their product. So, anywhere from that to like, on the other extreme is we get brought in early on in a program where they're still kind of in development with the host device. And, the power system gets sorted out early, but really there's no need for anything until they're actually ready to go to market. So, we end up just kind of being in the crowd, watching the development all happen until we're needed at the end. But that's something, we've been involved in meetings for 2.5 years before we have anything that's pertinent to us. So yeah, it's everything from same day to 3+ years.
Right. It keeps it interesting, right?
It does.
So before we get into your current role, I'd just love to hear a little bit, like, how did you get into manufacturing in general? I know you've spent most of your career in it. Maybe tell us a little bit about how you got into it and what you like about it.
Yeah. I think I came out of high school, super blue collar, graduated high school and started on the factory floor basically that same night, working midnight shifts. So I really cut my teeth as an operator and running machines. And honestly, because I was a drummer, I was able to do that very well just because I had hands that could do the work.
Yeah.
And I understood muscle memory and all those kind of things. So that's honestly where I got my start. And then I started to use a bit more brain power and got into quality assurance. So that's kind of the path that I went down.
Okay.
So then I have 3 degrees. I have a degree in drafting technologies, and then I have a degree in project management. And then I went back later on and got my MBA. Did all that while working full time, basically in manufacturing full time. But every time I took that next step, it was like, okay, how can I apply this to manufacturing, right? So it was like, even when I was in project management school, I was applying that every day to my job, right? It was like, go to school at night, go back to work the next day. Like, what can I pull from what I learned last night and like apply that to my job the very next day? Right. So that was kind of the approach that I took. So the whole time I was in school, like all the case studies that I used that was my work day, right? So it was like, so that's just kind of how I approached everything as I was moving forward. It was just like, how can I grow in manufacturing? How can I understand processes more? How can I grow people? How can I help this organization flourish? And it just kind of naturally happened. And then I just got to a point where it was like, we're looking for somebody to take the reins. And I'm like, hey, pick me. Yeah. And they did. And that was, 12 years ago. And here we are.
That's great. I love just one comment on your thing that I just came in because I got my undergrad in CIS, computer information science, and I just did kind of the regular thing, right out of high school. So, but then when I went back for my MBA, I was, working, and it makes a huge difference. I mean, I think like there were a lot of kids in even in the MBA program, which was surprising. There were a lot of one that was like, they just went and got their MBA right after their undergrad, which I never quite understood that. I mean, it's like, because you have enough life experience, I think, to really get the most out of it. But like, yeah, that was a great, I was the same way. There were times, we'd learn it and you'd kind of try to apply it to what you were doing at work. And so yeah, I just want to comment on that. I think it makes a big difference but that's impressive doing multiple degrees while you're working. I never tried that. So
yeah, I've never not been working, right? So it was like 18 years old, just jumped straight into work. And then I went back and tried to do a double major in mechanical and industrial engineering because, you're 19 and you don't know any better. And crashed and burned pretty heavily. So then I ended up finding like adult education and programs that were tailored toward working adults. So even though I was still like 19 years old, I was in class with people that, had been working for 20+ years and were now back in the classroom. So, I mean, there's a ton of value in non-traditional education. And just a plug for non-traditional education, going to a school where the instructors are working every day and the people you're in class with have had a career that's 20+ years. Like there's so much knowledge you can pull from that. And that's just the approach that I took, right? Is like, I want to know everybody's story. I want to know what the instructor did for work this week. I want to know how I can apply that and grow from that as like free education while I'm learning the curriculum. So that was just
Right.
always the approach I took.
That's smart. And two, one other comment, I know we're stuck on this for a little bit, but like another comment is it's key to like keep those relationships, right? Because I still talk to some of the people that, did my MBA with, and they're fabulous. They know a lot, they have a lot of resource, and keep those relationships going, because it doesn't have to end right when the school ends. So
Yeah. Good human beings generally continue to be good human beings, right?
Right. So let's get into your current role. I mean, just for those of us that don't know, I mean, I have an idea what a COO does, and I've worked with some in the past, but just maybe paint the picture for some of what your responsibilities are. What's it like being a COO of a manufacturing company?
Yeah, I mean, the COO is an interesting role. Generally speaking, if you ask people what a COO does, they're like, I don't know. He works with a CEO, I think. Because and honestly, what I've learned, and this is through my my interaction with the COO Forum, is even though we have the title, the title is somewhat misleading because every COO is different. The path that we got here is different. Our backgrounds are all different. And honestly, what we do on a day-to-day, though much of it is how to lead people and drive excellence, how we do that varies greatly. So like me in my role, since taking on the COO role, the title anyway, now I have under my umbrella, I have finance, manufacturing, procurement, design and development, sales and marketing. So I have essentially the entirety of the organization is under my purview. But I mean, I've met COOs that have a proper CFO where they don't really deal with the finance side, right? And then I know some folks that like don't deal with sales and marketing at all. Like they're only focused on the production piece. So it really does vary quite a bit, and it's a title that's just not defined very well. And a lot of organizations don't have a COO, right? They don't have that title, but they do have somebody in their organization that is the go-to guy that gets things done. So even though not every organization has the COO, there's every single one has a me. So yeah, my role is very much all encompassing of everything that goes on in this building.
It's a little bit everything. And then how do you, I mean, I guess like it's got to be hard prioritizing, right? Because I mean, the one time you're talking finance versus supply chain versus, personnel issues. I'm sure they all demand kind of your attention, and it's got to be tough sometimes to know which one to spend the most time on.
Yeah. And I mean, I always go back to some Stephen Covey, just some wisdom that comes out of, the 7 habits. And one of them is that continues to come up is you can't be efficient with people. And my thought, a follow on to that is be efficient with everything else, right? It's like, hey, if I need to go in and I need to crunch numbers and I need to make a decision, I'm going to get there as fast as possible, which some AI tools are certainly helping with some of that with ChatGPT. But when it's people driven, I have to leave all that aside. So it's like if I'm dealing with a people issue or growing a person or whatever it happens to be related to people, then I put the efficiencies aside, because then it's about being an effective leader and it's about understanding and it's about listening. But then if I'm filtering emails and answering email, like I don't view emails as a personal thing to do. Like that's an efficiency thing to do. So I have a email management system that I use called the stackmethod.com. Go out and use it. It's free. It's awesome. But that allows me to blow through my emails very, very quickly and make sure that I get answers out to everybody that's waiting for information. Because if it's a personal thing, somebody's going to call me or they're going to come in my office. If it's an email, then I don't view that as a personal communication. It's more like this is a task to check off.
Right.
So it's kind of, that's where the balance comes in, is like, the things that I can be efficient with, be as efficient as possible. The things that are not efficient related, meaning dealing with people, be effective, lean in, be all there. So that's kind of how I balance all those things. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a huge Stephen Covey fan. I remember when I read that book, I was fairly young in my career and I picked that book up, and I think that was probably the first adult type book that I had, read. And it just, I don't know, it just gave me so many things that just kind of blew my way of thinking. Like, wait a minute, it's some things that are so obvious now. But one quote that I loved that I always used to tell people that I liked from that book was, is this about this study where the guy studied all these Olympians or something and tried to figure out like what made the people that did well, why were they successful? And like the quote was something like they did the things that the failures wouldn't do. Like, they didn't feel like doing the workouts or doing this and that on certain times either, but they did them anyway. And those were the people that were successful. So yeah, so much wisdom in that book. I really probably need to reread it. But thanks for sharing your insights. That's a fantastic read if people haven't read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Let's talk about the COO Forum. So I know you're part of that, and I know it has kind of a presence on LinkedIn. Tell us about what that is and how you got involved in it.
Yeah, so the COO Forum is a professional development network. So it's a peer-based professional development network that's specifically for top-level operators. Obviously, in the title, it's COO Forum. But I mean, we have a lot of people that don't have the title of COO, right? They're director of operations, whatever it happens to be. But it's really a wonderful network of ridiculously smart people that are able to answer questions in the language of an operator. And the interesting thing is, so it's the format is a couple of things. So there are kind of localized chapters that are really kind of a small group setting.
Okay.
And then there is the COO Forum Collective. So the entire network of COOs that's, in the hundreds.
Yeah.
And we have sessions that invite the overall network in. So we have presenters come in and present, in a virtual forum, and they're all interactive. Like the one thing we talk about the COO Forum is it's not a spectator sport. We don't let people come in and sit in the back. Like you've got to participate, or else you're not getting the value out of involvement.
Right.
And so it's one of those places where, and it's a confidential forum, right? So you can bring up whatever topic you need to. And one of the things that the other things that we talk about is like, who else can a COO go to and complain about their boss? There isn't anybody. Like I don't have anybody in this building that I can go and complain about our CEO, but I can certainly do it at the COO Forum, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, me too!" Right? So it's one of those places that's like, it's a safe place, but it's also a place where you're going to get understanding, you're going to get heard, and then you're going to get feedback, and you're going to get real world experiences from other people that have the seat, know the language, understand the breadth of the title. And it's interesting that you've probably heard the phrase don't should on people, right? Like you don't tell people you should do this, you should do that.
Yeah.
And it's rare how often we get somebody that shoulds on somebody in the COO Forum. It's like the spirit of the conversations are more like, that's a really tough place to be. My experience with that has been this. And they share their experience, right? And they're like, take from that what you will, but this is kind of what I experienced. And it's very rare that we get somebody that's like, you should do this. It's more like, here's what I experienced with that, and here's the experience that I used to make a change, and here was the results of that. Right. And then we just kind of leave it there, right? And then we let the person who's brought the issue kind of glean from all of that what their actions are going to be, and then we've got some accountability behind that. So it's like, hey, we talked about this. You said you were going to do these actions.
Yeah.
Did you do it? How'd it go? Right. So it's just a great place to use as a sounding board and get some real world experience that you can't get anywhere else.
Right. Here's a little shout out from Chuck. So from the COO Forum. So thanks for that message, Chuck. So how would people join if they're interested in it?
Yeah, pretty easy. COOforum.net. And there's a link there to become a member. There's a little bit of a vetting process just to make sure that you check the boxes, that you're leading operations, that you're reporting directly to the CEO. I lead a few sessions. So, I mean, honestly, people can reach out to me directly and I can get you pointed in the right direction. I can get you a guest pass for a session coming up. There's lots of avenues to go. But yeah, just reach out to me directly and then I can get you pointed in the right direction.
Great. Well, thank you for all that. Yeah, it makes me want to start something like that for kind of what I do. Yeah, one more comment on that. Here's the COO
There you go.
Forum.net.
COOforum.net.
So thanks for that. Um, let's talk about leadership a little bit. Obviously, a big part of your role is leadership. And if you follow Josh on LinkedIn, you see him post about this a lot. And if you don't, you should definitely. He puts a lot of great, authentic content out there. Just tell me a little bit about. I love, like you. I think you've told this story before, where you've toured a plant and they want to take you to the boardroom, and you're like, take me to the floor. Tell us a little bit about that, and maybe how that translates into how you work with your people day to day.
Yeah, it's I don't like inviting people to my office, right? Because it feels like I'm sending them to the principal's office. So I'd much rather. And again,
Yeah.
I'm too blue collar, right? Like I want to be where the work's happening. So yeah, I mean, when I travel, and I mean, I'm responsible pretty much directly for our supply chain, which includes some overseas suppliers.
Yeah.
And the number of times that they're like, what do you want to see so we can prepare? I'm like, what I want to see is what you didn't prepare. Like that's what I actually want to see. Because like you could prepare whatever and show me, I mean, how you get better at playing drums, you practice, right?
Right.
Like it's the same thing. Like, okay, we've got somebody coming in. What can we show them that we've practiced that will show on our best light? Like, I don't want to see that. I want to go to the dock and I want to see the person working at the dock so I can understand how they're being treated. Are they being supported? Because that tells me more about the organization than what you're going to show me in your binders and what you're going to show me in your ISO standards. So that's just always been my approach. Like I want to go where, and that's the same approach I take pretty much with everything, right? So if there's a question and somebody comes to my office like, hey, what are we supposed to do? I'm like, let's go learn that together. And like, let's get out of my office because we're not going to solve that here. So that's generally my leadership approach is like, get out of my comfort zone and get in their comfort zone. Right? Get where they can show me, where they can lead the discussion, and it's their floor, right? And when they're ready for me to leave, then I leave, right? I'm not kicking them out of my office saying, hey, this discussion's done.
Right.
I'm waiting to be dismissed from them because really I'm there to serve them. That's my entire role, right? So really it should be CS, like Chief Servant Officer, right? Like that's what I do. Because if I don't break down barriers and help them in prioritizing and breaking down their own barriers, then barriers are just going to pile up and then they're not going to be able to get anything done. So, really it's all about just like understanding the role. The best way to do that is to go where the role is actually happening. See what's happening, see where the barriers are, and then help add clarity to that, right? And to use a Brene Brown quote, like, clear is kind, right? Clear is kind, unclear is unkind. Yeah. So the best clarity is where the activity is happening.
Right. And I bet like I have a lot of thoughts to unpack about that, but a couple really, one quick one back to drums as Drumeo, if you've followed them at all, they put these great content out there. But one thing they do, which is kind of fun, is they'll put this, super experienced drummer and they'll give him a song he's never heard before. Like, they had on Mark or Portnoy from Dream Theater, and they gave him Taylor Swift. It's surprising he's never heard of Taylor, like that song, but they gave him like a drumless version of him and have him play to it. I just thought of that when you said, I don't want to see what you've prepared. It's kind of that same way. Like that's the true test of how good that drummer is. If he can come in there and play pretty well to a song he's never heard before, it's a huge amount of respect. And one other thing just I want to point out is, and I led a team for a little bit, and and then my wife now is in the nonprofit space and leading, and the thing that I think a lot of leaders don't, that they forget, it's sometimes easy to forget, is like the people want to see you, right? When you're, assuming you're, not a jerk and the guy from the office space, but if you're, a good person and, your people want to see you. So it probably makes a huge difference that you're out there, meeting them where they're at, or you're not, in the stuffy, ivory tower or whatever the saying is. And I just remember my team too. It was like, sometimes it was like, you think, man, I'm in all these meetings. Like, can't somebody just leave me alone for a few minutes? But it's like, the team needs that time with you. Like, they value that time with you. So Just wanted to point that out. I think that's a very underrated thing that a lot of leaders don't do enough of. So kudos to you for doing that. So
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I like to think that they see it as valuable. And the other thing that it does is, like, I think they're in a mindset now that they know they're going to see me, right? So if they do have something that's not urgent, they're just going to hold it because they know they're going to see me on the floor, and they're not afraid to like, hey, Josh, when you get a minute,
that's
like,
great.
yeah, I got a minute, man. My minute's yours. Have at it. Share whatever you want to share. And,
Awesome.
it's interesting. Like I start to see the impact when we see something happen. We're on the production floor and somebody else says, well, let's go look at it. Right. Because I may be in a different section of the floor and they're like, hey, we got this thing. And they're like, well, let's go look at it. Like, yes, that's what I want to see. Like, that's the impact because I want that mindset to flow throughout the organization, that like, to solve the issue or to make things better, go to where the issue is. Like, don't stand here and prophesy, right? Like, oh, maybe we could. No, just go to the issue and see it really happen.
Have you heard of my friend and I always laughed at this saying, but have you ever heard of the saying that the Japanese like go to the Gemba? Have you heard of that? I don't know if that's
For sure.
I always thought it was funny, but we'd always say that, like, we'd be like, hey, you got to go to the Gemba, right? That's where
that's true.
So
that's absolute truth.
All right. Well, thanks for that. I want to switch topics slightly. I kind of help a lot of companies with their business systems. I'd be interested, just, I want to get into, like, in a manufacturing, obviously everyone's going to be different, but in your experience, I mean, tell us a little bit about what the different systems that people have, like, technical type systems and maybe how you interface with them, accounting systems or different CRMs or ERPs, that kind of thing.
Yeah, this is a fun topic. We have like 3 or 4 hours we can spend on. So it's interesting. The most ineffective off the shelf systems are because they don't address the messy middle. So what ends up happening is the ERP world that's out there is so based on finance that's where they start and stop, right? So what ends up happening is, and I've seen this in manufacturing facilities of all shapes and sizes.
Right.
You have situations where a company is using an ERP system. They're only using it to pay their bills and pay their people, and then so they get a purchase order, they get a contract, and then it leaves the ERP and ends up in purgatory somewhere, right? And it's things end up happening, and there's this system and this system and this process and that process and this binder, and in the 90s that filing cabinet, and then things magically happen on the floor, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're done, we're ready to kind of get back into the ERP system. So you end up in this like weird bookend situation where like how much activity actually happens between entering something in the ERP and then closing it out in the ERP that the ERP has no idea happened. And it's just interesting to see how much of that ends up being where the issues occur. Because it's, you end up with like this quality manager and this quality manager and this production manager, and they're using similar techniques and similar things that are generating data in different methodologies. And then you've got a COO who's like, how do I make this data make sense, right? Because it's easy to take a balance sheet and an income statement and see kind of what's happening at a macro level. But like if you're gonna start digging in, you got to get out of the ERP, because that's not going to show you what's happening between production and quality. It's not going to show you what's happening at the dock. It's not going to show you what's happening, going from one output of a process to another input of another process. So it's those pieces that is where the magic happens. And that's where so many things are just left behind, because the ERP is like, we need to make sure the balance sheet is pretty, and we need to make sure the income statement gives us these numbers. And then it's like the rest of it, good luck to you. Right.
So it's like that's what you mean by the messy middle. Like you have the beginning, which is kind of maybe when the product, when the raw supplies or something came in, the end, maybe where you sold it, and then everything else in the middle. Like sometimes you don't have, any advice for people, or have you had any times where you've had a breakthrough with, something that you've captured in that messy middle that made a big difference?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. So now we're in a position now, thanks to AI, where some of the messy middle integration can happen fairly quickly without breaking the bank. Because the challenge before has been like, a small manufacturer goes to unnamed giant ERP and says,
Yeah.
hey, can it do this? And they're like, sure it can, as long as you pay us $85,000 a year, right? And it's like, no, I'm not going to
Right.
do that. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, I've had some great success with some tools out there. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to
Yeah.
give away
Yeah.
all my
Fine.
secrets. But there are some groups out there that are targeting small to mid-sized manufacturers to help with the integration of the messy middle, to help. So they're starting from, and I go back to the roots of ERP, right? So the roots of ERP are really in finance. Like CFOs love their ERP system because it's like, my
Right.
balance sheet is this, my income statement is this, I can do my report, it'll export it because the ERP was built to do that. The
Yep.
COO is like, I hate my ERP because it doesn't give me the data that I need. So there are some organizations out there that are targeting starting with an operations base. So it's almost like starting with the core of the manufacturer's messy middle and then building it out from there,
Interesting.
which is really what a COO, which is somebody in an operations space, wants to see. Because we view the core of our business not from what the ERP tells us. We view the organization more from the core of the organization, and that's really what I see is there are some startup organizations out there that are starting to use AI to help the small to medium sized manufacturers sort out that messy middle piece.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I got some comments on that. Like I have, in my line of work, I do a lot with business intelligence and kind of combining different systems together. So I have worked with some COOs in the past where they kind of, I think they were trying to solve for similar to what you were going after, where the accounting had their revenue, the other system, but trying to figure out dollars per pound, or dollars per delivery, those kind of things. I guess some of that can still be just right out of the bookends, but some of that you need, how much, the cost, a lot of the cost that went into it and things like that. So yeah, I've had some experience where helping, some other clients help get data out of that messy middle, but it's not it sometimes can be a challenge, but I think in my experience, a lot of people struggle with, systems that don't talk to each other. You're saying the ERP, a lot of companies like this one had, they had kind of a homegrown, or not a homegrown ERP, but an industry specific ERP. And then they had specific delivery system. Then they had one for their, they had a CRM system. Then they had one for their, production, for monitoring the chemicals and such like that. And they didn't have any way of kind of getting the whole picture of combining the metrics that you would need, instead of just looking at one side or the other. So yeah, I think that's kind of similar to what you were talking about. But yeah, it seems like I guess if you keep working on it, you'll get to what you need. You're right. It's kind of a lot of the big vendors probably focus more on the bookend side.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
I guess just in general, what are some of the challenges in manufacturing that you see, I guess in your industry in specific, like, you hear some about labor challenges or supply. Is there anything particular that you find either that you're struggling with now, or that other manufacturers you hear about are?
Yeah, again, we got 4 or 5 hours to spend on this topic as well. Yeah, we're in an interesting world. So there's a lot of talk these days in manufacturing about Industry 4.0, and lights out manufacturing and automation, and I see a couple of interesting barriers to that, and I think we'll probably end up seeing a handful of companies do it well, and we'll see a lot of companies struggle with it. I think we're about to enter a phase kind of similar to the mid 90s when the big three automotive companies decided to get together and combine their quality standards, where all the manufacturers that were supporting those industries were kind of scrambling to get QS certified back in those days.
Okay.
And some of them just couldn't, right? And they closed their doors. So, what I suspect we'll see is we'll see some larger manufacturers that will end up in a situation where their entire integrated supply chain and everything is communicating on the same system. And much of the communication that goes all the way from the customer all the way back to very raw materials will be automated. And there'll be very few people involved in the management of the overall organization and supply chain. But I think there's also going to be some pushback, because what that's going to create is a situation where you're basically requiring your supply chain to adopt the exact same systems that you are and speak in the same language and do a lot of things. So I suspect we'll see some of that happen. We'll see somebody do it well, and it'll be like, oh, that's how it can work. That's how it could work. But I mean, I still see that there's going to be quite a bit of pushback, especially in the small, medium-sized organizations that potentially can't afford to put the resources toward that, or they're not willing to give up so much, because the other thing that will do is give potentially 100% transparency into each organization, right? And that can be a dangerous place to go if you're a small manufacturer supporting a very large manufacturer, because then they can just come in, know exactly how your processes work,
right,
and come in and decide, like, this isn't the way we want to do it. Let's shut them down. Or we could pull this chunk into our own organization and skip them. So I think there's going to be some risk in some of that. So, so those pieces I think are interesting on the tech side. On the personnel side, it's a crisis. I mean, manufacturing is in a massive crisis, and what I see is causing much of it is gig work, because now we're in a position where there's enough work out there for folks at entry. We'll say entry level, right? We'll put that in quotes, because that it's different everywhere. But I'm going to just to generalize it. An entry level manufacturing position is going to have set hours, and they're going to have to be here, and they're going to have to clock in and out, and they're going to have to take breaks at certain times. They're going to have to tell somebody they have to go pee. They're going to have, like all the things that happen in a manufacturing setting. Or they can go deliver food, or they can drive people from the airport when they want to, and they can, so I feel like that gig work is making it so that full-time manufacturing jobs, there's a lot of, especially in city centers, right? So, I mean, I'm in Indianapolis, and there's enough work with DoorDash and Uber and those kind of things that having somebody come work a warehouse job or, sit down and build things is not enticing. So, I think a lot of that's going to end up being leadership needs to get a bit creative with schedules and a bit lenient with some attendance things, because that's what people are looking for, right? One of the first questions in an interview now is, what does a day look like, and what if my kid is sick, and what if, right? And it's that flexibility piece that's now, unless you're paying a ridiculous amount of money, which none of us can afford to do, it ends up being like, okay, I can make this much money and have a schedule that I don't control, or I can make the same money and have a schedule that I can control. Like, which one are you going to pick? Right.
I never thought of that. Wow. That's amazing. I did never make the connection, I guess, that those two are kind of competing for resources. Wow. Yeah. And obviously with the current, presidential, it's hard to know if that's going to help it or hurt it. I mean, it seems like there's the pushes to get things more focused on America and that kind of thing. But I mean, obviously then, like, I'm guessing companies like you, though, you still have to import things from, so then could it hurt you on one end and help you on the other? It's hard to know.
Yeah. It is interesting. Right. And my comments are always like, there's going to be a result. There's going to be a reaction. and we'll find our way. We'll find out where we fit. Because I mean, yeah, with us, automation is not high on my priority list because we're high mix, right? We're low volume, high
Yeah.
mix. So I mean,
Right.
I can't spend a ton of time on the automation piece when we're building 50 of something.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So
Doesn't matter.
that's one of the challenges. It's like we're always going to be somewhat people reliant, just because if you're building 10, I can hire somebody to come in and build 10. I'm not
Right.
going to spend 6 months on automation to build 10 quickly, right? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
I think what we'll see in terms of like production and manufacturing coming back to the U.S. is it's going to be the high volume automated stuff. It's going to be the stuff that's like lights out manufacturing, where you need one person
Okay.
to run 1 million square feet of equipment. They go in, they turn everything on, they know everything's up and running. They've got monitoring on their phone because they have some app that shows them what the factory's doing. Right. They shut the lights off, they go home, they come back 3 days later, and now they have 40 million parts that were built while they were home. So I think that's the kind of manufacturing that we'll see come back. And I say come back, I mean, be brought back on shore. But I mean, I don't see anything people heavy coming back because it doesn't make economic sense, unfortunately, here in the US.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Let's talk just one more thing about AI. Just what's your experience with it? I know we've chatted a little bit. Are you using it? Do you find other manufacturer companies using it at this point, or love to hear your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, this topic comes up in the COO Forum a lot now, because it's and again, the COO Forum is also industry agnostic, so there's lots of different industries in the COO Forum. But I mean, in the conversations I'm having, I think almost everybody that's using it well is using it as a companion. They're using it as a sounding board. They're using it to do things that they can do efficiently or more efficiently with AI. Nobody's doing it to replace people. That kind of thing just isn't really true. It's more the people that are using it well are using it as a companion piece. For me to prepare for this call, I took the list of questions you sent me and I dumped it into ChatGPT. And I said, I'm going on a LinkedIn Live. What kind of things do you think I should focus on when I'm asked these questions? And because I've used it enough, it had context already. So it gave me a list of things. So I was like, when you're like, hey, man, you ready to go? I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to go, whatever. So it's, it's those kind of things that's like helping. And from a leadership perspective, it's helping me prepare to be a better leader. It's helping me prepare to communicate better. It's helping me prepare to speak in the correct voice. Right? Because that's another great thing about AI is that you can give it context, you can give it a personality, you can tell it to interrupt you, you can tell it to have a true conversation with you. So, I think using it as a companion is really what the future holds. I know that there's a ton of stuff in machine learning that is using AI to potentially detect upcoming defects and those kind of things. But again, that's more on the automation piece, which just doesn't fit our realm, right? So for me, it's more about like, I want to make sure that anywhere that efficiencies are important, that I'm using AI to first go ask AI, like, how can you help me do this more efficiently? And that my team is doing the same thing. Like, I want my team to have an AI companion. I want every single person to have some kind of AI companion that starts to learn them and that they can then leverage to get their jobs done more efficiently. Because like the COVID, remote work, and now AI is redefining productivity. The definition of productivity has changed. We're not going back to 2019. So the idea of like, hey, you need to be here 8 to 5, we're going to pay you to be here 8 to 5 is not a thing. Now it's about, here's the work that needs done. Here's how we want to grow the organization. Here's your input to making that growth a reality. How can you leverage AI to get that done more efficiently and more effectively? Full stop. It is that simple. So it's more about training about how to use it as a companion and not how to use it so that you're afraid you're going to lose your job. Because that's not what I want to do. I want people to be amazing at their jobs, and I want them to use AI to help them get there.
Right. Great thoughts. Yeah, I love it. Well, just in the time we have left, I want to have a few minutes on something fun. Switch to drums. Just talk a little bit about what kind of music do you like to play, or what's kind of stuff you love? What music on the drums? Tell us about your experience with it.
Yeah, I mean, I have a drum pad here in my office, right? I mean, so it's I come from a marching band background, so I marched all 4 years of high school, and then I marched with an independent ensemble, Matrix, an indoor ensemble, 2 years after that. So much of my early years of drumming has been very, very technical. So it's been a lot of, rudimental, making sure my hands can do what my brain thinks they can do.
Mm-hmm.
So then, like, becoming an adult and, later on in life, like standing and playing legatos for 4 hours on a drum pad is not what I spend my time doing, because I spent all that time doing that as a kid. Right. So now it's like, if I want to play, usually what I'll do is I'll turn on and I'll go to whatever music streaming platform.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'll turn on funk radio. Like, funk is a great thing to just, like, because you can play over funk and do fun stuff. Anything by Prince, because I mean, Prince just is generally speaking, his stuff is longer, like the songs are longer, and you can get kind of creative and make your own messy middle of his songs. And honestly, Michael Jackson stuff. So it's all that kind of upbeat, steady tempo. You feel the drums already playing, and almost as like a companion drummer. And just feeling it out and having some fun. The technical piece is like, I know my hands can already do it. So I don't have to spend time doing that piece. So now it's just like, I want to put some earbuds in and just sit back. And then the next thing you know, I'm like, I've played like 15 songs and I've been sitting here for 3 hours somehow. But it's a great release. It's a great place to go. But that's generally the stuff that I turn on and just kind of rock out.
That's awesome. I still gravitate mostly towards rock, progressive rock and stuff. But I mean, a lot of it, the drummers I really like, I can't play exactly what they do. But one funny story that I think you'll find amusing is my son, loves Mario, all things Mario, Super Mario. And there's a lot of these music where they've, taken the game music and made, electronic versions of it or something. I don't know what it is, but some of those songs are the most fun to play on the drums, because you can just screw around and, like, I don't know, you just be free with it. It's so cool. I never thought that'd be enjoyable, but
I used to listen to the rock stuff. Like, going back to your comment, like I used to put rock on, because that's the genre I like to listen to.
Yeah.
But I find that I end up being too rigid. Because that's what I hear, right? Is the rigidness, because like rock music. So a big difference, and this is subtle, a big difference between like listening to a rock song and listening to something like funk is where the actual beat is in comparison to where the drum track is. So generally speaking, a rock drummer is playing ahead of the beat a little bit,
right?
Because they're driving the rhythm. Whereas funk music, it's more on the back end of the beat. So the feel ends up being, and again, it's subtle, but it's enough that, like, when I sit down and play rock music, I feel like I almost feel anxious, because I can feel that it's on the front side of the beat, and it's partly because I've like studied drum beats so much,
right? But
I can feel it. I can feel that I'm ahead of it, and I'm like, I don't want to drive. Like, I didn't sit down to drive. I sat down to groove. So like, I want something that's going to set me back just a little bit, where I can feel it first, right? So that's a big difference for me, and that's why I switched over to funk, because I think I put on a rock station once, and gosh, what was the song that came on? It was like a Stevie Wonder tune, I think, and I was like, this is what I want to hear. Like, this is the kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, well, let's turn on Stevie Wonder radio. But then it was like, it played some of his slower stuff. And I was like, okay, what other artists is in there? And then I was like, Prince. I'll play Prince. That's perfect. Yeah. Then I put Prince on and was like, yes, this is what I want to feel when I sit down, because like I want it to feel good.
Yeah. Right? You're not doing it to like add stress, right?
Yeah, I didn't want to get up and be like, I just felt like I put 3 hours of work in, right? I want to stand up and feel like I'm ready to go have a margarita and like chill out on my patio. So
Right.
that's why I changed that attitude a little bit, just because I could
Yeah.
feel it. I could feel the drive of rock music. And then I was like, like funk is like
Yeah.
this comfortable place. And if I want to stop for a few minutes and just listen, like I can still stay in the vibe and I
Yeah.
can jump back in and play with them. So yeah, that's kind of the
I love
approach that
it. I love it, man. Thanks so much for sharing that. Well, I think that's all the time we have. We could talk about that for hours too, but Josh, what's the best way to get a hold of if people want to learn more about you or connect with you? What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm a LinkedIn guy, right? It's so DM me on LinkedIn, reach out, connect on LinkedIn. If you're local to Indianapolis, or let's go get a
Yeah.
coffee. I'm very much in it. Let's go meet in person. But yeah, I'm a LinkedIn guy. There's nothing. There was a situation last year, I think. I'm connected to a guy named Dan Mott. You should reach out and follow him as well. He's fantastic. But we
Yeah.
talk about being pitch slapped in the DMs, right? So somebody comes in like, I'd love to connect. I'm not here to sell you anything, but let me sell you all my things, right?
Right.
And one of the things that happens is I get a ton of emails. And I got an email one time that was like, I love all the stuff you're doing on LinkedIn. And I follow you and I love this post and I love that post. And, I love all the stuff you're doing. And hopefully we can
Yeah.
connect on LinkedIn. So I sent you this email. I'm like, if you
Yeah,
know I
wait.
like LinkedIn, I'm on
Right.
LinkedIn.
Right.
I'm pretty, like, you can go to my LinkedIn profile and schedule a
Right.
time right from my profile. Why would you send me an email? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So yeah, definitely
Yeah.
reach out
Go to
on
the
LinkedIn.
Gemba. Like, remember what we were
Yeah,
just talking
yeah,
about?
exactly. Interact with my posts. It is me. It's my authentic self. I do throw a lot of stuff in there just about being a dad, being a husband,
Yeah.
my role here, and what we're doing. So yeah, reach out on LinkedIn. That's the best place to get a hold of me.
All right, Josh. Well, thank you so much. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.